Good morning, everyone. So it has been a little while since I have posted a video because this next message has been on my heart for a minute. And it's something that I had to kind of sit back with and kind of let grow into a place, do a little bit of research, kind of check out a couple of things. And then, while all this was happening, I definitely, we all as a country definitely experienced a couple of things that have happened to our LGBTQIA plus family regarding their right to insurance and medical procedures and things of that nature, especially with people that identify as trans, and of course a landmark Supreme Court case where it is determined that people are in fact protected under sexual discrimination for work. So roller coaster of emotions, up, down, left, right, center. But I wanted to kind of come on real quick because I really wanted to speak to the struggle and who in fact has lived the struggle, right? So there's a lot of people when we talk about race relations in America that try to negate the argument that Black people are discriminated against in America by saying things like, my ancestors were discriminated against too, but I was able to pull myself up by my bootstraps and, we don't have the same problems that African Americans claim that they have. So I wanted to kind of speak to that real quick because half of what that person is saying, well, not really half, like all of what that person is saying is true. There have been several classes of immigrants or people that have come to this country that were legitimately discriminated against and not able to do the things that the colonizers were able to do, right? So the colonizers come to America, they, rob, pillage, rape, kill, destroy, demand, whatever, establish America on stolen land, and then build up America with stolen people, right? So we all know that. But then during the growth and expansion of what we know as America today, immigration was definitely a thing. Like immigration, there were several waves of immigration and people that have come into this country. We all learned about it in our history classes, albeit, not the greatest history, was taught in schools, but we all learned about it, right? So there were certain classes of people that were discriminated against. And so I'm from New York, right? I'm from New York. And so I learned New York history, and the first 13 in New York history is heavily taught. I'm learning that it's not like that putting a kid through school in Texas. They don't teach the first 13 like I learned the first 13 here in Texas. They teach Texas history. So when we learn about the first 13, we learn that there were many waves of people that came in. At one point the Irish came, and then, the Germans came, and the Italians came, and the, blah, 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 so on and so forth. The Asian people started to come and things of that nature. And the way that we were taught it in school was that, these people came and they contributed and they were able to, diversify the culture by, bringing their food and their artisanship and their all these different things. And it was great and it was wonderful and it was this and it was that and it was yes. They don't tell you for real, they touch upon it, but they don't tell you for real that all of these people were persecuted and discriminated against as heavily as anybody else that has come to this country. Irish people, there were campaigns against hiring Irish people, allowing Irish people to, buy houses and buy land and, work and whatnot. When the Iron Guild was first formed in New York City to start building the skyscrapers that we all know and love, the only people that were able to get those jobs were the Irish people because they were dispensable. because there was no safeties put in place to build these buildings that went miles into the sky. They were like, nah, that's all right. The Irish people can do it. We don't like them. So if they fall off a building, no big deal. Irish people, Italian people went through it. German people went through it. Greek people went through it. Definitely Asian people went through it. So why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because instead of it being a point of divisiveness, why won't it be a point of like unity? If you know that your people were put through something, why would you automatically come back to me and say, well, my people went through it too, and look, we're not mad about it, we're not concerned about it, we're not this. Are you kidding? Like, why are you not standing right next to me and being like, hell yeah, my ancestors had to go through some stuff too, and it's not right, and these people are still going through it, and it's not right? Like, why wouldn't you take that stance? Because the reality is, right, eventually the Irish people became accepted and were allowed to classify themselves as white. The Italian people eventually became accepted and were allowed to classify themselves as white. Same thing with the Germans, same things with the Greeks, same thing with everyone. And not for nothing, at one point, even the Asian people were considered white for like 5 minutes, but it actually happened. And so if the mentality of the country and the historical government is white is right, the fact that all these people were eventually able to consider themselves and classify themselves as white gave them a leg up. Enter white privilege. Right? So if you're Italian today, if you're Irish today, if you're Jewish, even I forgot about the Jews. Oh my God. How do you forget about the Jews? Because the Jews went through it. The only time that the Jews were really able to be like accepted and just came in without like any flack, and even still they still had flack, was like during World War II, because we all felt bad for them. Prior to World War II and like Hitler's Nazi regime, try to be Jewish and immigrate into America. You wasn't getting none of that. None of it. So, I digress. Jewish people were able to consider themselves as white at one point, and still can. So, like, all I'm saying is that when they got that, when they got that classification, their whole entire existence was allowed to change. They were allowed access to all kinds of institutional biases and institutional what's the word I'm looking for? Institutional advantages that those of us that are darker complected didn't have access to. So you say, okay, you know, my people immigrated into the United States of America, so we don't have that generational wealth thing. We don't have all of that. But, you know, somehow you're still able to have access to institutions that I don't have access to. Somehow, when you go buy a house, you're able to see all of the houses within your price range, and you're not steered to certain neighborhoods to keep you away. Well, actually, you are. You're steered to certain neighborhoods to keep you away from certain elements, not to keep you included in certain elements. You see what I'm saying? Like, things like that happen to you if you're white, but they don't happen to me if I'm black in 2020. Why is that? That's because institutional racism established that those institutions that you benefit from, I directly don't benefit from. Like, it is a biconditional situation. Because you benefit from it, I directly do not benefit from it. So I put a post up earlier today on my Facebook page that said, you know, it was like different shades of brown and tan and like skin tone colors. And inside each of the boxes of the skin tone colors, there was, you know, these different sayings that white people say to black people to placate them to believe that they are acceptable because they like them. Things like, you're an Oreo. I don't consider you to be a black girl. You talk like a white girl. you're the whitest black girl I've ever met. I don't consider you to be black, Tammy. Things of that nature is what's in this graphic, right? And so it was interesting to see some of the people that had reacted to it and said, I don't really see you that way, or not. They didn't say that I didn't see me that way, but it was just like, it's unbelievable that I used to think like that. Like, I'm sure that I said something like this, of course, with the best intentions at one point in my life, but now that I know better, I can see how hurtful that is. And then I posted another thing on my Facebook that said something like, when I went to go buy a house, there was like an infographic, and the lady said, it was a black woman, she was saying that when she went to go buy a house, she was floored at the fact that the realtor or the lender had said to her, it's common for people to get a small gift of about $500,000 to put down on the house. Is your family able to do that for you? And she was just like, I'm sorry, what? And that is a direct result of those institutions that were put in place that absolutely do not benefit us, but give certain white people generational wealth because they benefited from, at some point or another, free labor in the American free labor system. And of course, you know what I'm talking about. So, stuff like those two infographics coming together to recognize, I want you to recognize what those two infographics mean for my existence in 2020, right? Because even if you happen to be, and I mean, on that one about the lender, the $500,000 gift thing, a couple of my white friends came on and they immediately were like, no, my family didn't give me that. I wish my family would have given me that. I definitely didn't. I had to, rub pennies together. My girl, Nicole. We had to rub pennies together to make it work. Of course. But your ancestors didn't come into the institutional generational wealth that some of the other white Americans did. Your people are Italian. Your people are Jewish. Your people are this. Your people are that. Right? So that means that they didn't have, at one point they were discriminated against. At one point they weren't able to do those things. At one point they were, the cast out race of people or class or culture of people that could not make it happen in America. So y'all had a late start in forming your generational wealth, just like us. But for us, it was so much worse. And I'm gonna get to that in just a second. So then one of my friends jumps on and she's like, what's wild is I do know people that had the gift of $500,000, but they're Italian immigrant families that were able to do this for their people. To which I said, oh yeah, it's a reality. It can happen. You can, in fact, if you're given boots and bootstraps, aka be classified as white, right? If you are given boots and bootstraps, you can then pull yourself up by said objects. It can happen. And so you get to have that wealth. You get to, get a business and put it on Main Street and make money and, provide for your family that way and do all the things and the stuff and provide a structure for which you can, pass down your wealth to your generations. It can happen. Absolutely it can happen if you're given the boots and you're given the bootstraps. You can earn the boots and you can earn the bootstraps, and they are given to you when you earn them, right? At the same time your family was morphing and given those boots and bootstraps and being called and called into a different class and being classified a different way, my family was suffering from the black codes, which were laws that were put into place right after the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which freed free states slaves, right? Which didn't end slavery, but I digress. After that happened, the black codes were sanctioned by the U.S. government and allowed to continue through years right after 1865 that created petty criminal offenses so that black people could be arrested, because a part of the clause for the ratification of the 13th Amendment said that no man is to be put into bondage or slavery unless committing a crime. And of course I'm paraphrasing, but basically what I'm saying is, if you committed a crime, you could be sold back into some sort of form of slavery. So the black codes were created specifically for black people. If you are a Negro and you do not have a job, you can be arrested for loitering and not vigilantism, but like vagrancy. You could be arrested for that, just for being and not doing something for yourself. So if you couldn't find a job, you were considered to be a criminal. You could get arrested, you can get tried, found guilty, and then be sent into somebody else's employ without a paycheck to do field labor, or to do, harvest cotton, sugar cane, work cattle, whatever. Sound familiar? These are things that can happen. If you were the child of a person that didn't have a job in certain states, you could be sold into an apprenticeship until you're 18, where your master could punish you for any offenses he deemed necessary, in any way he deemed necessary. So at the same time that your family was being classified and pulled up into a different category, and being able to start a business, make a pizzeria, start a leather shop, become a cobbler, whatever, and put your business on Main Street, own a pharmacy, start a bank, own a jewelry store, all those things, and put it on Main Street. My ancestors were being arrested for petty thefts and thrown into jail to be sold back into slavery. So that wasn't our start. Our start didn't happen right after slavery. We were not given our 40 acres and a mule. We weren't given anything. We were given a whole bunch more roadblocks that still made the American dream completely impossible for us. And all of these institutions, black codes, Jim Crow laws, all the different things that you hear about all the time, had far-reaching consequences that still affect me as an almost 40-year-old black woman in America today in the 21st century. Like, these are real things, man. So then, you talk about the LGBTQIA community, right? Because they're marginalized too. And so because of your sexual orientation, or how you feel you need to identify, how it is true for you to identify, you can be denied medical care. It's considered to be cosmetic surgery if you are a man living in a woman's body, and you need a double mastectomy so that you can get rid of the mental health conditions that have been created by the fact that your body does female crap and you're not a female. Because that mess is real, and it messes with your mind, and it causes you to completely and totally lose said mind. So the Hippocratic Oath says, first do no harm. So what's the harm that's being done? If you deny someone, hormone therapy, surgery, whatever the case may be, to make their current existence match what they identify as in their brain. Where's the harm being done? By giving the surgery or by denying the surgery? Because mental health is harm. Like, mental illness is harm. That's what I meant to say. Mental illness is harm. Just things to think about, guys. Just things to think about. So we really need to, keep all those things in mind when you're talking to your people, or when you're, having these conversations and these debates and whatnot. It's really worth it to find these things out. And I mean, not for nothing, if you need references for anything that I'm talking about, holla at your girl. I'll be able to give them to you. As a matter of fact, talking about black codes and all that good stuff, let's talk about police for just a hot second, right? So, because police started because of the black codes. There were no police in America before the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Not a one. Not a one, not a one, not a one. There were people that were employed to catch slaves, but they were not considered to be police. They were just slave catchers, right? So their main goal was to go out and catch slaves, runaway slaves. Those people morphed into an organization that then went out to find criminality in the black communities to maintain commerce. There is currently, I'm so sorry, that little part of the road is very bumpy. There is currently a documentary on Netflix called The 13th, the number 13 TH, that speaks to all of the stuff that I'm talking about right now. By all means, go ahead, take a look. It's free on Netflix right now, and you're more than welcome to go ahead and do that. And it'll tell you all about what I'm talking about, because it's real. It's real out here in these streets. So, I mean, just discrimination does not happen just in the black community. That's my major point of this situation. Discrimination happened everywhere throughout history to all different kinds of people. The difference is that discrimination for all other peoples in one way, shape, or form lessened or completely disappeared for almost everybody except for black, brown people, and those that are queer. 2020, black, brown people are still fighting, and queer people are still fighting. When's it going to be our turn? Who knows? But thanks for your ear today. I appreciate it. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope that you are taking breaks and drinking water. I hope that you are finding ways to find joy. I definitely have. This was another weekend where I found joy. That's why you didn't hear from me, because I didn't want to do it. But the fight continues, and we're not going to let it go. We're far past the 2-week expiry. Congratulations, everyone. We made it. So let's just keep going. Let's keep the momentum going. This is a real life civil rights movement that we are in the middle of right now, and do not let it go. Do not give it up. Because discrimination and racism is real. And until we all are on the same level and on the same playing field, we got to keep the party going. We got to keep the conversations going. We got to keep the legislation going, because it's not fair. And I pledge before you today, I'm not going to stop until I'm completely free. I'm not. I am so grateful to the year 2020 for my freedom. You have no idea. Because this is the time. Now is it, and we're going to do it. So I really hope that you stay in lockstep with me. And if you want more information, I'm more than happy to give it to you. Let's do this. Thank you so much for your heart.